And boom goes the dynamite.
You know, not to toot our own horn here at Daily Dive, but welcome to another big show. I am Michael Karvelis in for Renee Washington, and I appreciate everyone joining the show today. Be sure to follow us at Daily Dive Lax across social media platforms, and when you do so, you can check out the Daily Dive store found in the link tree in our bios. There, you can pick up great merchandise for the show with awesome Daily Dive logos. That thing is great. Got a little lacrosse action scene in there. Check it out at Daily Dive Store on Daily Dive Lax across our social media bios and click the link tree. Our top story presented by the Daily Dive Store is the NLL has made a major hire. And I mean, this is a monster move by the National Lacrosse League to get some eyeballs on the game. They have created a new position in the NLL, which I'm sure has been in the works for a while, called Executive Vice President of Commercial Operations. Now, this position will be this position reports directly to NLL Commissioner Brett Frude, and the work starts this week. Now, who is the person hired for this role? I hope I'm going to say this name correctly. It's Kurt Hunziker. Kurt Hunziker is the first ever executive VP of commercial operations in the NLL. And I cannot wait to see what he brings to the table. And the reason why I cannot wait to see what he brings to the table is because I've looked at the man's resume via the NLL website. It's worth the read. It's worth taking time to see what this guy's done. It's insane. It's great work. Now, let's get to some quotes first before we get into what he's done. Commissioner Brett Frude said, "The National Lacrosse League is enjoying a post-pandemic rebirth on and off the field, as evidenced by our rise in attendance and revenue, media exposure, and the expansion of partnership programs by our teams." Commissioner Frude went on to say, "Kurt has the perfect blend of creative and practical business experience to help us capitalize on this next vital phase of enterprise growth." Let me stop right there before I get into the next part, because it's vital to know Brett Frude himself comes from NASCAR. And I know NASCAR is such a boring sport to a lot of people, but it has grown a lot in the last few years, namely because of what they've been able to do with the new playoff formats, with stages. If you watch NASCAR enough, or at least are around it, you know what I'm talking about. They gained new eyeballs when people thought the sport was, for lack of a better word, just not good enough anymore, especially after 20 years ago with Dale Earnhardt's passing. Well, Brett Frude, working with Stewart Haas Racing, helped NASCAR grow. He grew a great team with Tony Stewart and company, and he also helped grow the marketing for NASCAR. So he brings in Kurt Hunziker, and this is what Brett Frude said about Kurt Hunziker. His experience with disruptive properties like the XFL St. Louis Battlehawks and with emerging businesses like MILB provide the right mix to help shape and grow the NLL business and promotional platforms like never before. Now, Kurt Hunziker, I mentioned the XFL's Battlehawks, or that's what the website mentioned. In 2020, the XFL was not just doing well on the field, but in the stands. In fact, Hunsaker was part of a strategy for the XFL that saw the St. Louis Battlehawks leading the team to landmark. He led the team to landmark growth for the startup before the pandemic, and he also, I'm getting to the right point here. They also led the league in things like social media and marketing goals by as much as 97% before the league shut down. Of course, we all know how the XFL ended in 2020. It's back now with less fans. And it's interesting, this man was part of one of the most successful teams. Now, he also helped MILB, which is the minor league baseball, from January 2015 to June 19, and then again in 2022. Now, the MILB saw its best growth and most interactions in its like 100-year history. This man did that. So here's what Hunsaker had to say regarding the NLL. After I talked about the Brett Fruit statement, here's what Hunsaker said. I look at the NLL as a property that is exactly what brands and consumers want. Fast-paced excitement, bingo. Great athletes, bingo. A growing fan base, bingo. A solid ownership structure, bingo, I guess. I don't know much about that part, I'll be honest. And he also said, I took exception to this. He said, and a great media partners in ESPN and TSN. Oh, and the Daily Dive. We're not media partner, but you get it. He said he is looking forward to helping the league realize its business and brand potential beyond what exists today. This is so awesome. I am like complete fangirling over this moment because I recognize the XFL was packing out houses, especially in St. Louis. It could have been the market they were in, didn't have a lot anymore with the Rams being gone. But XFL was doing well. And the fact the MILB had its greatest year under this man's watch is amazing. You combine the fact with Brett Fruit helped market NASCAR. The NLL is just in a great spot, okay? Now, yesterday, I'll be honest, I took a dump all over Paul Rabel in the PLL. I was not happy with the fact they didn't have stars at their games for the championship series, the Sixes, which is really a ripoff of what the NLL does. So I love the fact the NLL continues to make these moves because it is vital. If we want to grow the game, if the goal is to expand the game to major sports like hockey, football, basketball, if this is going to be that kind of league, if lacrosse is that sport, this man, along with Brett Fruit, they are exactly the people you want in power. I encourage you to go to NLL.com. I encourage you to look at this article. It's one of the first things you'll see. It's Kurt Hunsaker. This is amazing. And I hope the league, I hope the players and coaches and owners appreciate this moment. Because let it be known that I'm going to tell you right now, combine the fact with ESPN Plus, combine the fact with ESPN getting some games, the Stadium Showdown, give it 2 years. Give it this year and the end of next year. I guarantee you, I'm calling it now, you will see an insane growth on not just fan engagement, but social media. How many times have you heard about NBA Twitter or NFL Twitter or social media in general, people talking about sports, arguing? That's what this game needs. This game needs those polarizing things to talk about. It's why Daily Dive is literally a thing. One of the main goals of Daily Dive, one of the foundations of Daily Dive is to have this show draw narratives, to draw stories, to tell people about the NLL and about lacrosse. Mostly the NLL, but you get it. And I'll be honest, I've been in talks with one of the marketers for one of the teams that we recently were in communication with. And he said the players are not just great, their stories are great too. And I agree. Who didn't love hearing Callum Crawford talk about moving closer to home to not just FaceTime his kids, but now he gets a chance to actually go to their games. He gets to take a 4-hour trip every day from Tulsa, Oklahoma to Panther City, okay? There's stories to be told. There's names like Callum Crawford in general to be talked about, and we are so excited that the NLL is making these steps. I'm telling you, Give it to the end of not this season, next season. I guarantee you, I'm calling it right now, the NLL will be way more popular than you could ever imagine. These two guys, I'm telling you, their history says a lot. I've watched NASCAR and the XFL closely. These two guys are no joke. Kurt Hunsaker, again, I hope I'm saying his name right. This is awesome. Thank you and welcome to the NLL on behalf of someone who's not media partner with the NLL, but you get it. When I come back, enough talking by me, because we gotta bully the play-by-play broadcaster of the Saskatchewan Rush. Friend of the show, Cody Janzen, will come back and try to explain what the heck happened against the Vancouver Warriors. It's Daily Dive. You're not going anywhere. Neither am I. Don't go anywhere. It is my pleasure, as always, to talk. Well, not as always. I guess I'm doing it now. But it's my pleasure to announce again our big guest presented by Fanatics. It's another friend of the show. It's Cody Janzen, Saskatchewan Rush play-by-play broadcaster. Cody, first of all, how are you doing today? Without even talking about any games or any sports, how are you feeling today, sir?
Hey, it's a great day. It's a little snowy outside, so I'm not going to lie. I can't be the biggest fan of that, but it's not bad. Hey, we made it to March. It's going to happen, and so I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's not snowing in Georgia. It's like 80 degrees every day, which is just incredible. I'm always jealous, but hey, if you get blizzards, I understand why that gets annoying after a while. Cody, welcome back to the show, and I want to first touch on something that I talked about in the first segment. I know you have to be aware of this. Kurt Hunsaker, again, I hope I'm saying that right, is the new executive vice president of commercial operations. Will be talking directly to Brett Frude, trying to market this whole thing called the NLL. What is your initial thoughts of that?
Well, I've never talked with Kurt Hunsaker personally, but I've seen the list of accomplishments, right? I mean, you're a football guy. You would have seen the XFL stuff that he did in St. Louis. He's done a lot with Major League Baseball and the farm system there, the AAA, AA levels, stuff like that. So I think that's very relatable to what the NLL needs. Because, and this isn't a jab at the NLL. Everyone knows I love the product as much as anyone, but they're not a competitor with the NHL or the NBA. They're a competitor with the minor leagues. And so you want to become the best minor league, like MLS soccer did before MLS soccer became a major league. So I really think that there is that aspect of the NLL that you have to become a premier minor league before you can become a bottom end major league. And I think that's the transition, right? Because those bottom end major leagues, they're paying guys full time. It becomes a little bit more professional in that sense. And I really do think with Fruit as well in charge, I'm excited to see what they do. I think it's been a little quiet on their front, and
Agreed.
It's not to really take a shot at them. Like, I don't expect them to be doing Instagram lives or anything. But again, I'm curious to know what's going on behind the scenes, what's in the works, what's next season going to look like. Because I really do think we could be in for a shock, and they could drop a bunch of stuff and be like, okay, we've got these new corporate partners. We've got these new initiatives. We're doing this. Like, everyone saw the PLL over last weekend, was it, with the little sixes tournament there, but they put on one weekend event and guys were getting paid $5,000. Champions got $15,000. I think runners up got an extra like $2,500 too. So like, if your team was one of the four, I believe there was 4 teams there. So, if you're one of the top teams, you made $7,500 to $15,000 for playing 5 days of lacrosse, something like that. Like that's an impressive amount. I'll tip my cap to that. Now the NLL has to respond. The NLL has to do something to take that next step so that you are, as much as you don't want to say you're in competition with the PLL, like I mean you are 100%. I think it's time to accept that fate that, you know, you need to step up your game to continue to grow the NLL. But I do think that those two guys that you've mentioned are the right ones. I'm just curious. I guess maybe patience isn't my forte. I want to see what they're doing. I want to see what's next for the league. I'm excited.
I'm with you 1000%. I'm a little bit more optimistic, but you are right. I think you're realistic. I think you know it can happen. You just want it to happen, and you have to see that for yourself before saying, "Oh yeah, these guys look great." I personally, like I said, I followed NASCAR and XFL closely. Not so much minor league baseball, but I guess doing something for the first time in their 100-year history is pretty good if you're Kurt Hunsaker. But I do agree with you. It's time to step up, and they could start dropping stuff like, you know, a Gatorade. I'm kidding. They could start dropping a bunch of stuff, and it could be really cool. So I'm excited for the future. Well, I'll tell you what I'm not excited about, and I just, what happened, man? The Rush seemed like to be on cloud 9, and then Vancouver came around again, and this time there was no comeback by the Rush. What happened?
I've only had to answer this about 75 times this week, so I'm pretty primed for this one, Mike. What happened was it was a trap game. I talked about it with John Fraser the week leading up. I talked about it with multiple other people. I just felt like this was a game where Saskatchewan was coming in off such a high and Vancouver's coming in off of such a low. And, you know, when you back a dog into a corner, usually it's hungry and it's going to come out and bite. And that's what Vancouver did, right? And then their bite was matched with good goaltending from Aaron Bold. You know, they got contributions from their bottom, you know, 3-4 forwards. That's something that they haven't had all the time. Keegan Ball goes off for 11 points. Sean Evans has 7. And it's crazy to say, but Vancouver was disciplined. You know, they gave Saskatchewan 3 real power plays. I think they were chalked up with 5 because Charlotte Beatty's got 2 minors at the end. But, like, Vancouver played their game to a T. Saskatchewan didn't. Saskatchewan, you know, they need more of their top guys. You need timely saves at certain points. And I think everyone would agree with that. I don't think that's, you know, a hot take or calling anyone out. I just think that from Saskatchewan's standpoint, they played as poorly as they have all season. And Vancouver was just able to capitalize.
I had the luxury of listening to you and John Fraser, your awesome color analyst next to you, after the game. And one of the things that John mentioned, which I have been like parroting all week here on the show, is, was it a matchup issue? I know you want to say trap game, but to me, that's almost like it's too easy to say, oh, it's just a trap game. Is it possible that Vancouver just had enough juice these 2 games and had the right guys in front of them? Because obviously Rush want to beat a certain team that they've struggled with that should be the Darlings, and they're 6-2, the Seals. Could this be possible? It's a matchup issue, or is it a sign of things to come that could get really long and ugly?
Well, that sounds like the post-game show right there. It's, you know, half the people want to blow it up and the other half are like, we got to trade and add. So the deadline's still a few games away. My biggest concern with the Vancouver loss is season series do matter in NLL. Calgary's been able to beat Vancouver 3 times already this year. So now you just let one slip away that could come back to bite you in the ass come playoff time. But there's also that bigger picture of Vancouver has been playing better. I know you won't see it on the score sheets, but they lost 14-9 to a Calgary team that's very good. You know, they were going punch for punch with them. Everyone wants to, like, write them off because of their record, and fair enough. They're a 1-9, 2-9 team now. But there's also an aspect of they've got some guys who can play still. Like Keegan Ball is world class. Kyle Killen shoots the pill as good as anyone in the West. Sean Evans, still the agitator that just buries and capitalizes. And again, you got to give him some credit. Charlotte Beatty's played good. Bowering was good. Bold was awesome. So for Saskatchewan, yeah, I didn't love the matchup from the get-go. but that's also a little bit scary in my mind where I had that gut feeling. And so I hate being right about things that are negative. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think
Good
that's
point.
where I'm at. And now you got a chance to respond in Fort Worth this weekend. So it's a go out and show everyone again that you can bounce back, and that last game was kind of just a blip in the radar.
Hey, thanks for the optimism and the reality base there too. You're right about that. So if the Rush, I know we talked about, I teased you before about this, but let's say in your mind, like not just what you're hearing, because I know that's easy to jump around. If it was up to you, what would you make a trade move? If so, how significant would it be? What position would it be?
Mike, you're throwing the GM hat on me here.
Yes.
This is okay. Give me a second to gather my thoughts, because I think that there's a lot that goes into this from a trade perspective. Is you still have 3 more games before the deadline. You've got Calgary, San Diego, Panther City, I believe, off the top of my head. So that's a tough 3 games, but you're 5-4 right now. So if you are 7-5, do you consider adding, considering 10-8 probably gets you in the playoffs? I think you do. If you are 6-5, does that make sense? If you're 6-6, I guess 6-6 is probably the number I was looking for. If you're 6-6, now do you consider looking at your UFAs and your other players and saying, who can we get a return around? And do we consider, looking towards the future and trying to get a little younger, trying to get a little more potential in some other positions? Again, the Rush aren't a young team top to bottom by any means. They've got some veterans who have been there, done that. I don't think it's worth throwing names on the block right now, but I think that there is some needs that could be met. And number one priority right now just comes down to the health of Marshall Palace. And if he's good to go against Panther City, okay, that's fine. Now you've got 3 lefties, but if he's out, you only have 2 healthy lefties. As Clark Walter's still on the IR, you got to go find yourself a lefty forward. Again, McClellan played a little bit of forward against Vancouver. I really believe Jake Boudreau is the guy who probably could play out the O-gate if you need. Jeremy Searle played out the O-gate in Orangeville. There are guys that would be stopgaps, but I'm not sure you want a stopgap when you're in a playoff push. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you need to mortgage the farm, but I also don't think you want to wait around and hope for the best, because if you do end up back at 500, or once you start getting to that 7-loss mark, now you're kind of playing for your season right there, and you don't just want to enter the back door in playoffs.
That's true. I do want to make a tease of Jake Boudreau, because my fault we didn't get to talk last week, but I loved how, isn't he a rookie? Jake Boudreau's a rookie, correct?
That's correct. It
blew my mind when Dave Dobie wanted to chop his head off after a garbage time goal for a hat trick, to be fair. It blew my mind that Jake Boudreau stood there and oh, you're mad at me? Oh, that's cool. I'm eating McDonald's right now. He had the stonest face. I'm like, does he know who's talking to him right? It blew my mind. I love Jake Boudreau for that moment.
He's Brampton. He's Brampton tough. I mean, there's that guy has zero fear in the world. Again, I don't like the comparison to Rubish because they have different styles, but the way that Rubish can bully around guys, the way that Rubish lays hits is very similar to Jake Boudreau's aggression level, where he's blowing up guys early. He's not afraid to push you around. He'll give you that extra hack. So I fully get why Dane Dobie did it. I think that there's an unwritten rule that to some extent could have been crossed. But if that's what you want to go with, then the league's crossing it by having goals for and against matter in a playoff tiebreak. Again, I think that's probably not appropriate for a professional league to go for goals for and against, because then you do entice teams to go and blow out other teams, because it could matter come after game 18.
I do like how John Fraser took a shot. You didn't take a shot at that during the broadcast. John Fraser was like, I haven't seen something like that since I was a young goalie. I was like, wow, John, that was great. But now you're taking shots at the goal again. So I guess we don't want it anymore is what we're saying. One last thing I have to ask you. Give me a quick tease, because we run out of time here, about Panther City this Saturday, 8 Eastern. What can we expect from the Rush And what do you expect?
Oh, it's always a good defensive battle. I feel like when these two teams meet in Fort Worth. So I scrapped the first meeting of last season where the Rush went and just, ran show on Panther City. I felt like the atmosphere got to a lot of their players. I don't really put much stock into that. And then the last meeting of the season was the very last game of last year where everyone kind of just had their 1Bs in. And so, it was a fun weekend. Guys exactly weren't primed and ready for it. So I checked those two games out, and I say that Saskatchewan and Panther City have had two real meetings in the NLL. A 17-16 game in Fort Worth where Malcolm had the OT winner.
Wow.
And then an 11-9 game this season, New Year's Eve in Saskatchewan, where it was a game of runs and Panther City was there the whole stretch of the way. So I really expect a Tracy Kelusky team to be ready to go. They're motivated. They're coming off of a loss as well. They play disciplined. They play fast. They play tough. Now you got veterans like Callum Crawford. Like they're gonna be tough. I think their game has kind of changed though since Crawford came, and it's not a knock on one of the greats, but again, it does look like it sometimes their offense has gone a little stagnant compared to earlier this year. Despite them putting up goals, hey, they can still score, but I want to see, if I'm Panther City, when you have success, when you're building for the future, I want to see the ball in the stick of Jonathan Donville. I want to see Will Malcolm. I want to see Matthew Gauthier get the majority of the touches. And so I get why they've got Crawford. I think he's going to be an opportunistic. I think he's going to score. But you also have to be cautious on, how much does that cost you? And so, again, that's not a shot at Panther City. That's just what I've noticed this week watching them. And for Saskatchewan, it's all going to come down to the offense and getting a good start, because, Panther City's probably going to put 9 or 10 behind you. But if you can hold them to that, you're all right. You should win. If you let them start, getting in that 14 range, now you better hope for an incredible offensive outing or some massive saves in overtime, or, you're going to lose your second straight game.
I just need I need to give more bouquets to Bouquet. If Bouquet can start strong, I'm feeling good about the Rush. That's all I know. So
yeah, he's been good. I think that he's had really strong performances, and there's going to be ones he wants back, right? Like when I watch those goals against Vancouver, I do my own grading on what I consider good, questionable, bad. I really don't think that he was the issue against Vancouver. I think, his low quality or bad goals against that I count is much less than other netminders in the league. It just comes down to the timing. And when do you get those big saves? Once you bring it back to a 9-6 game, can you get 2 or 3 big saves from your goaltender so that you can cut that lead from 3 to 2 to 1? But if you all of a sudden let in a couple that are just, you'd wish your goaltender would have had that, now that hurts the team a lot more. So I think Bouquet is a capable guy. He's 1 win away from his career high, and we've only played half the season. So I don't think there's any reason to lose faith there. It's going to come down to a full team effort, and that's what Saskatchewan needs all season, because the West is that good. There's no easy nights like when you're playing in the East.
I'll tell you what, you do the research, we don't. That's why you are what you're doing, I'm what I'm doing. Thanks so much, Cody Janzen, for joining the show. Janner on PxP on Twitter, as well as Instagram, I believe, as well, is the username there. Thanks so much for joining the show again. Get back to what you're doing. Go Rush this weekend against Panther City.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Mike.
Yes, sir. It's always fun having returning friends of the show, because I feel like we just keep on building off what we talked about. I love taking shots. I love it. When I come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Stadium Showdown and how that is helping grow the game in a place that kind of needs it right now based on attendances. We'll be right back and wrap it up on Daily Dive. some new brews in the morning. We're talking coffee brews. Check out B-Res Coffee Company. Go to the link tree in our social media bios at Daily Dive Lax. Click on B-Res Coffee Company and sample some great flavors. When you check out however much coffee you want, use the code Daily Dive. I'm not going to spell it for you. It's Daily Dive. Use that code and show B-Res Coffee Company you love them and we love you and them. And by all the love to go around, they've got some unique flavors of coffee, man. And I am low-key going to try that pretty soon. I'll be honest, I like coffee. I don't drink it, but I like coffee. And if you're telling me there's other flavors out there besides just the random, mocha and, French vanilla, yeah, I'm all for it. Their Valentine's Day stuff was awesome. Like chocolate-covered strawberry flavor? What? That was cool. Our last brew, though, presented by B-Res Coffee Company, is Stadium Showdown is drawing closer. And boy, I am excited for this one as well. This is like our version of the Sixes. I'm still taking shots at Paul Rabel. But Dan Funk, that's F-U-N-K in case I have an accent, Director of Marketing for the Seals, had this to say via the NLL.com websites. We're tapping into new fans who may not have heard or been interested in the Seals. Listen, Dan Funk, I don't know what the issue is, but sell some tickets, bro. No disrespect, but you have a job as Director of Marketing, and I think he said it best. Never heard of, or probably not been interested is what I'm going to go with. How are the Seals 6-2 and like getting 3,200 fans every week? That is sickening. We talk about it on the show. We report the attendances. We have the luxury of doing so in the NLL. And the fact that San Diego is always near the bottom of the barrel is so bad. And this notion that, they need a bigger stadium, why? If I can't max out the first one, it's like if you're playing The Sims. I don't know if they have stadiums in the Sims game. The life simulator. If you're playing the game of Sims, like Sims 4, you have a stadium, and you want to upgrade or one of those little city builder games, if you cannot make money off the first one, you cannot upgrade to the second one. That's not how this works. As for the Stadium Showdown, I'm excited for it. This will be an awesome game. And this is a fun fact. I did not know this until reading this article. This was originally scheduled on the site of the Top Gun where that movie was filmed. In 2019, it was going to be between the Seals and the Warriors. I'd like not to say the COVID-19 pandemic was a good thing, but in terms of marketing for the NLL, I would, again, no disrespect to Vancouver, I would much rather see the Vegas Desert Dogs versus Seals. You talk about a rivalry that's brewing in National Lacrosse League heaven? Yeah, that's this. You cannot tell me that if these two teams get going and, kind of physical, that eventually this will be they're pretty close. Like San Diego and Las Vegas, this is like one of the closer teams. Of course, you have the three New York teams. This could be a little rivalry. If Vegas keeps fooling around and pulling off upsets, oh yeah. I love what the NLL is becoming, and I cannot wait. We've talked about Kurt Hunsaker being the inaugural executive vice president of commercial operations. We talked to Cody Janzen about his thoughts on that. Also, what happened to the Rush against the Warriors and what's going to happen against Panther City. And we just talked about Stadium Showdown. I cannot wait for it. 4-5 Desert Dogs, 6-2 Seals. I might run a poll after this show on Daily Dive Lax. I want to figure out if our game of the week should be the obvious elephant in the room, the Nighthawks and the Rock, or the Stadium Showdown. Because to me, that could low-key bring some energy. It's like one of those games that you circle. You don't know why. Like you circled it because people are going to show up. Like I'm sure the Rush, when they played the Seals on ESPN or ESPN2 or whatever it was, they circle like, hey, there's a lot of people watching that game. Let's show up in this one. The Desert Dogs had a fight on their first national broadcast game. So I'm excited. I think that could be a low-key game of the week. But I don't want to have like 2 games of the week because we're not TSN. That's just weird. But let me know what you guys think in the comments and also on the poll. I'll make it. Which should be the game of the week? Rock versus Nighthawks for the East supremacy, even though Bandits are right there, or Desert Dogs and the Seals. I'm going to go with the Stadium Showdown. I don't know what you guys think. Thanks so much for tuning in to Daily Dive. Follow us at Daily Dive Lex. I'm Al Karvelis once again in for Renee Washington. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you back here tomorrow for a Thursday edition of Daily Dive. Adios, so long, and good night.